What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we are here with Nameless of the Almighty Ghost Bath. Great to be able to talk with you today, man. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you here. I can't believe it was 4 years ago. In fact, it was 4 years ago at this time I just started the outlet tour. I saw you guys on the tour with Thy Art is Murder. So, man, does time fly.
Yeah, that seems like forever ago.
Yeah,
I think that was our last big tour, and then we decided to write this album, and haven't been able to tour since. So
yeah. Well, I was supposed to see you on tour with Abigail Williams, but I think that there was some sort of issues with like transportation or something. So,
yeah, we borrowed a van and it died, so we had to drive it back to Minneapolis from. I think we were in upstate New York, and we decided we just had to turn around and go back. And the moment we pulled into their driveway, it just like died for good. So I don't know how we made it back. We just drove it 24 hours to get back, so we wouldn't stop running it because it would die and like overheat as soon as we stopped. So we're like, all right, we just got to go.
wow, that's insane. It's like one of those things where like every time the truck dips below a certain miles per hour, like a bomb detonates or something like that.
Exactly, exactly. That's how it felt because that would have sucked having to fly back and leave the van and everything. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's the last time we borrow a van.
yeah.
So
But on a more positive note, or more negative note, depending on how you look at it, we got the new album Self Loather coming out very soon this October. Was the intention of this album just to make a direct continuation off of your previous album, which was the last one, which was titled Star Mourner, or was this meant to be kind of like a new beginning for Ghost Bath in a way?
this one closes out a trilogy: Moon Lover, Star Mourner, and Self Loather. So this would be the final part. So in some ways, it is a continuation, even though there's like a new sound on it. I didn't want all of them to sound the same. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't call this a new beginning. A new beginning would be like the next album after this one. This one's kind of the third and final basic human emotion I was trying to capture with each of these albums. Should be tragedy, ecstasy for Star Mourner, and then doom or hatred with this final one.
Okay. Do you feel that like maybe these albums should be listened to chronologically? I know that Funeral was really the first full-length Ghost Bath album, but like do you want like people to start off with Moon Lover, then listen to Star Mourner, and then listen to Self before starting with Self Loather? Or if a listener is just discovering you guys on this album, it's not like they missed out on anything or something, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's a certain order that you have to listen to them in. I think whichever one looks cool to you, maybe from the cover or whatever you're in the mood for, you could check them out. I think each one kind of appeals to a different person. If you really like atmosphere, maybe Moon Lover. If you really like melody, maybe Star Mourner, and then this one's a bit more heavy. And this is the only one that actually has lyrics and like a black metal type vocals. And so people who like that sort of thing, you can just start with this one. I don't think I didn't write it like this is number one, number two, number three. They're just three concept albums that are part of the same trilogy, but there's no particular order to them.
Okay. Do you think that maybe the first two singles that you released, High from the Sun and Convince Me to Bleed, are a good representation of what the entirety of this album is going to sound like, or is that just scratching the surface?
It's hard to say. We do have a lot of different styles of songs, I would say, on this. I mean, Hide from the Sun is the most depressive, suicidal black metal track on the album. So we do have other stuff that's kind of close to that, but I don't know. It's hard for me to judge my own music and say, oh, this like sounds like everything else. I think once I write it, it's done, and like that's for everyone else to decide. Like, oh, this track sounds totally different from the rest of the album. I don't think I could even like figure that out at this point. To me, it's one album to me because I wrote it all at the same time, recorded it all at the same time. So it's hard to say. I mean, some tracks are like longer than others, but most of them are a lot shorter. I think, and we also got rid of like a bunch of songs and kind of honed in on tracks that would make sense to go together. So I would hope that it sounds like one cohesive album. So I mean, if you're looking for more, intense, straight to the point stuff, the Convince Me to Bleed single represents that. And if you're looking for the more depressive, suicidal, black metal end of things, Hide from the Sun represents that. And they're both represented throughout the album.
Hmm.
So,
You mentioned that you like suicidal black metal. Are you a fan of Life Lover at all?
oh yeah, that's where I got the initial idea for the name Moon Lover. Everyone always said, "Oh, you're like trying to copy like Sunbather," and it's like, no, I I was listening to depressive, suicidal black metal and Life Lover. I loved like the name of that band, so that's kind of an homage to Life Lover.
It's so good because they're my favorite black metal band ever, and it feels so good to be able to talk to somebody who enjoys their music as much as I do. I think Kim Carlson. I mean, I'm just gonna say this. I think Kim Carlson makes Dead for Mayhem look like a poser. I'll just say that right now because of just how true he is. Do you have a favorite Life Lover album? Because I think nothing tops Pulver, even though I love Erotic and
that
the.
that's what I was gonna say. Pulver for sure. I listen to that one a lot more than the others, and I think I love the cover. I love all the samples. Like in the beginning, it's just yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah,
Pulver for sure.
the girl who was on the cover of that album actually passed away. So
Really? Oh, I read a bit about her, and he said she was like a friend of his,
yeah, her
and he got her to do it. That's all I know, but I didn't know she passed away. No.
Yeah, her name was Eleanor. I've always said that she is to black metal as like what the girl from the Around the Fur by Deftones album was in a way, but for black metal.
Hmm.
But yeah, I thought like Kim Carlson just recently did like a whole video, like an hour long video retrospective on that album alone. So
Really, I should probably check that out then. That's cool.
yeah, and if you want the most depressing instrumental music ever, listen to Consider Suicide as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that he writes all that as well. But when it comes to like this concept that you explore within Ghost Bath, having elements of grief, having elements of hatred, having elements of ecstasy and stuff, is this based off of your own personal experiences, or are you looking maybe in the eyes of somebody else and maybe singing from a different point of view than who you personally are?
Um, Up until this point, it's all been completely from my perspective, and completely personal. And I would write it when I was in a certain mindset and I could really portray those feelings like honestly. I wouldn't like force myself to write music. I wouldn't be like, oh, I need to get this song done. I'm just going to do it because it needs done. I would just let it come naturally. And when I got into certain thoughts come up and you get into that dark space, that's when I knew, okay, I need to like get the guitar out and start writing. With this album, I actually did for the first time write one of the tracks from somebody else's perspective, and it actually didn't even make the album. So you might hear it as like a single or a B-side or something later on. But yeah, everything that's on the album and everything we've released has been directly from me, directly from in here. So
Yeah, which I find kind of ironic. Are you ever worried that the song you left out is going to be a B side and just be the biggest hit you guys ever had?
I don't know. I think the reason I left it out is because it was my least favorite. So
All right,
we'll see.
stick with your
But
gun.
maybe I'm wrong. Maybe everyone loves that one. I've been wrong before, so
Yeah.
you know.
Have you always needed to hear the music to come up with lyrics, or do you find that these concepts that you explore maybe influence the direction of the sound as much as the lyrics?
Well, this is the first album with actual lyrics. So I've always done music first, and with the previous albums, all up until this one, I would just go into the studio with no lyrics, no plan, nothing, and I would just do it on the spot, one take, with all the vocals. That would be for the EP, Funeral, Moonlover, and Star Mourner. And then with this one, we had all the demos written out, and so we had the songs front to back, and then I'd listen to the songs, and I would just get in that same mindset that I was when I was writing it, and I would write out the lyrics, and then from there I sort of like planned, okay, this part needs like more of a mid or low. This part needs like a high. It was definitely like a more analyzed thing this time around. Like what would fit better in this part with this riff as opposed to something different. And so then I took the lyrics that I had written and kind of like parsed it out and put them, okay, this spot's gets this line, this spot gets this line. So yeah, it's always been music first, and then lyrics and vocals are like the last thing I do.
Hmm. Do you want the music to be open to interpretation, or are you trying to get a listener to sort of see things, or maybe even feel this essence that you're trying to explore through this trilogy?
No, no, I don't want anyone to feel anything that I tell them to feel, or I don't want them to feel a certain way. I want them to take whatever they can from it, whatever experience they have in their own life when they listen to it. Everyone's going to have their own taste, their own experiences, they're coming to it as individuals, and then they're going to take something different from it than I ever could. And just like, when you make art, no one can make the exact same thing you do, because you're a unique human being, and no one's going to have the same line of experiences than you do. Like I said, um, if you, let's say, you just had a big breakup and then you hear the song, you're going to hear it way differently than, if you just won the lottery or something and then you
Yeah.
listen to the song. Or that, those are like extreme examples, but you know what I mean? Like, um, even all the previous music you've listened to before us is going to affect how you listen to us, because kind of how we do on tours, we're either like the lightest band on a super heavy tour, or we're the heaviest band on a lighter tour, and the bands that are surrounding us give us context, and we're perceived differently because of that. And so I like kind of standing out like that too. Like, we would purposely play more melodic, lighter, prettier, atmospheric stuff if we were with a bunch of heavy death metal bands or something, because I kind of like being like a breath of fresh air, like kind of standing out. And so, yeah, when people, that's just what I want to portray. But when they listen to it, if they get something totally different, like, that's completely fine with me. The biggest compliment I've ever had was at a show. Is in Austin, Texas, and somebody came up and said, "Oh man, I was like laughing my ass off while you were playing and you're at your vocals." I was like hysterically laughing. It was so funny. And then the next person in line at the merch table said I was like crying at the same time, the same show. I thought that was just so cool and so powerful that we could have like such opposite reactions to the same exact experience. And so I just love all that. Sorry, I'm kind of like carrying on about
No,
it.
no, please do carry on. I love it when you do. And I think that represents on how like bipolar in a way your music really is. I think that the it's not just the message that's very open to interpretation, but it's the way that you take that in. And what I really liked about what you said is too is because I often think that sometimes when an artist says, "Oh, it could be anything you want it to be," I think it's like sometimes looking at it as like a cop out as just to not explaining your work, but you almost have a way of making that open to interpretation element part of your work in a way, and you're not it's something that you abide by. It's not like just kind of like a calling card message.
Yeah, and I was really trying to take that to the extreme from the beginning, because I didn't have any lyrics. Um, I got the idea. It was kind of a weird mix, but it was a mix between a band called Silencer, the super high pitch, they're a depressive suicidal black metal band. You probably
Yeah.
know who they are.
Yeah.
And then Sigur Rós, which is a band from,
I love
I'm
them.
probably pronouncing it wrong, from Iceland, who make up their own language. And so I kind of took those two concepts, put them together, and yeah, so it's just, I didn't want people to read the lyrics, oh, this is about this, I have to think this. And so yeah, I just took it to the extreme and just let people interpret it however they want. And like I said, laugh at it like I did when I first heard Silencer. I thought it was hilarious, and then I started liking it unironically slowly over time. Or it could really like touch you. Or even when we toured with Dying Fetus, and he was asked who's the most like extreme brutal band you've ever toured with, he said Ghost Bath. I would have never, pegged us to be that.
Yeah.
They asked the drummer from Dying Fetus said that,
Oh,
Trey,
yeah, Trey is the man.
because he was like, oh, it's just these like brutal screams, and it's like in agony, and it was so like heavy. And I was like, oh, okay, see, like that's his interpretation of it. I hadn't heard that before. I love that. Like, whatever you want to think of it, you know, any art that makes you like feel something, or any reaction at all is fine with me.
Yeah.
So
And Trey from Dying Fetus is a great guy. I've interviewed him
Yeah.
in 2018, and he was just like you would think that a band that brutal, like he was like one of the nicest guys ever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were really cool. I just remember, so like they were like, uh, were they co-headlining no, they were co-headlining with Black Dahlia Murder,
yeah,
and so like they're in charge of like the catering or whatever. Their tour manager was like, "Oh, you can't eat until they eat," and then but like Dying Fetus comes in, they're like super cool. They're like, "Oh, guys, just like eat whatever you want, do whatever you want." You know, they're like super humble, down to earth. So I really liked touring with those guys for sure.
yeah. Kind of going deeper into your catalog, do you find that like because Moon Lover, Star Mourner, and Self Loather are part of a trilogy, that your first full length album, Funeral, is almost kind of like excluded, or is it its own individual concept, or being that it was the first album, it was just a whole trial and error sort of thing?
Mm, man, that was so long ago. That was so like the EP was just like kind of the proof of concept type thing where I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. They're actually just supposed to be demos, but my initial band quit when I showed them the demos because they didn't like the vocal style and I didn't want to change the vocal style. So I was like, okay, I'll just put this out on my own. And it kind of got a little bit of traction, like nothing crazy, but people were interested, people were liking it. And so I was like, okay, can I like make a full album of this kind of stuff? And it was all written just by myself with like I had $100 guitar, I had a demo version of Fruity Loops, I had nothing. I just, whatever I had with me at the time, um, I just used. And when that album came out, that's kind of when like the snowball effect started where like I got a lot of traction, a lot of people were starting to interested in it. And so that's the only album that's not done in a studio. Um, and that was before I actually decided to make Ghost Bath a band, a project, something that I actually focused on. Because prior to that, it was just kind of on the side so I could make music while I was in school. Um, I had quit my previous band to just go to school full time. And then I was like, I miss making music. So I started making Ghost Bath stuff. And so Moon Lover, the switch from Funeral to Moon Lover was kind of going from, okay, this is just kind of like a fun project on the side to, oh, this is something I'm going to take serious. And I went to a studio, recorded Moon Lover. And so, yeah, it's kind of a big switch, but a lot of people do still tell me they like Funeral just for what it is. So it's definitely a different sounding album.
It has what I call like the debut charm to it, or the underground
Mm,
charm to it. Like, you know how like
yeah.
there's always like people in black metal and death metal who like have that one underground album that either people don't know of, or it's kind of like I think people tend to gravitate towards that because I think it really is sort of like it is sort of like a hidden gem in a way. I think people who do love this new album should go back and listen to Funeral, just because I think it represents evolution, the beginning of evolution.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think certain people, not everyone, like the idea of like limitations, like you don't have the big studio production. This is like somebody just creating it on their own with what they have. I think that's kind of what makes it unique, gives it a unique voice. Like I was super surprised. It's weird to think that like something like that where it was just the cheapest guitar ever, like I didn't even have proper software, I had to write it all in one session because it wouldn't save. I couldn't export it. I could just export it as a song, not as a project. So it had no editing whatsoever. Something like that would be, released on Nuclear Blast Spotify. Like I was just, what? It just like blew my mind. But I think that's cool too that they would like release something that's like, I don't know if you want to call it underground, but just yeah, probably just like an underground black metal album that's done on a shitty computer.
Yeah. Well, hey man, black metal has been recorded in ways way worse than that, and people gravitate towards it. So, you
Mm,
know. And the final question I wanted to ask you is kind of going by the alias of Nameless, and I know you answer to both Dennis and Nameless, but going as the alias under Nameless, do you almost feel that maybe in Ghost Bath you're portraying, like, maybe for lack of better words, like a character, or like maybe a certain type of persona that only exists within your albums and your live performance, or is Nameless just a direct extension of who you are?
So at first I used it because I wanted to remain anonymous. That was the main reason. I was like, what's an anonymous name? Nameless, one with no name. But then obviously that didn't work out because I wanted to start playing live shows. I was like, okay, I'm not just gonna hide at every show and hide my face. That seemed like too much work. Um, and now Nameless, I feel like it just represents the idea that music can just connect with anyone. Like I didn't want it to be like, oh, this is Dennis's song. This is what he thinks. I just wanted it to be basically from the beginning just interpreted by anyone however they wish. And I'm just kind of a vessel that it's going through, not coming from. Um, but I wouldn't call it a character. I would just call it a different way of a different perspective, I guess, a different side of me. Like it's always going to be who I am. Like I can't be somebody I'm not. And the way that I write the music and sort of release those like dark thoughts when I'm writing it, I guess that specifically like boiled down would be what Nameless is, because I get into that same exact mindset when I perform, and I feel like I'm performing as Nameless. But yeah, it's hard to explain actually.
Yeah, I'm glad I got to save the
like
hardest
like it,
question
like
for last.
it's both like a character and it's not actually. Now that I think about it, it kind of is a performance character, but it's part of who I am. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think anybody who's acting in anything, whether you're a actor in Hollywood or you're an actor like in an, or portray a character in music, I think in the end it's going to be part of who you are whether you realize it or not. The second you accept that script, it's going to be an identity that you live by, because I think we are what we create, and even if you look back at your earlier work with shame or whatever, it's still part of who you are.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I've always said that art is a scar that you leave on the earth.
I like that because I that kind of fits with my idea about art, or philosophy about art, I guess, is that it's not like what you're good at or what you can do. It's like your flaws and your errors and your failures are what make your art unique to you. And so other people can identify with, where your shortcomings are. And that's where kind of the connection over art happens.
Definitely. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time and for such an awesome conversation. I can't wait for the rest of the world to hear this brand new album. Is there just anything else with Ghost Bath that you would like to promote? Obviously, with this fucking virus that shall not be named. Obviously, touring is still sort of up in the air right now. Tours have been happening, but it's sort of here and there. But is there anything with the release of this album that you would like to promote?
Just listen to the album. Um, each track, I think, could bring something different to you. If you don't like one track, maybe check out another one. We don't have any tours or anything confirmed right now, just with how everything is, and we're not going to like rush super hard into it because I feel like it could get canceled at any time. So as soon as like any tours or anything come up, we'll announce it on our socials. So wherever you can find us. But yeah, just for now, just listen to the album.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Nameless of Ghost Bath, Self Loather, coming out very soon via Nuclear Blast. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.